All right, guys, we're back. We're recruiting, and this is part 2 of the recruiting series. We're going to be recruiting now with James Madison University. This video is going to be at a different pace than part 1. If you missed part 1, we went through recruiting as a powerhouse. We were the Texas Longhorns, and we really just kind of focused on kind of that pre-week 0 area. The video went longer than I thought, so I broke it up into 2 parts, but now we're going to do James Madison University, and we're going to be going through kind of at least part of the actual season. So we'll be going through week by week, kind of talking about the different strategies, how things start to unfold, especially when you're a lower ranked team like we are here. So let's get to it. One note for this video is that I've used the default coach. I've of course edited it as much as I can to be Mike Lowe here, but it is not the start at level 1 coach. And the reason I do that is because there just aren't any coaches, even in the Sun Belt or like in the MAC, that are anywhere near a level 1. And so I think he starts me at around a level 20. I'm probably still the worst coach in this conference, and so probably the worst coach in the country. And I'm okay with that. I think it kind of keeps it a little bit more realistic. If you want to go ultra hard, you can of course just start at level 1 and do your own thing. The only negative I can see of picking one of the default coaches is that you're going to kind of have their persona when it comes to like their badges and their abilities and things like that. So just something to note, pros and cons to each way you do it. I just wanted to be upfront of why we're a level 20. Of course, looking at quarterbacks again, and I see some 4-star prospects, but I, as James Madison University here, am not really going to be focusing in on guys that are probably beyond like the top 5, maybe even the top 3. It just kind of depends on needs. Maybe if they have like an A+ deal breaker or something like this, maybe. But we can always come back to this later. But like, I'm not really excited seeing a 7th, 9th, and 10th 4-star. The challenge with the James Madison is that I also don't see great fits for 3-star prospects. Ultimately, I only need one quarterback. We are going to be adding DeMarcus Brommel here. And the other guys I was looking at, just to kind of go through the thought process, was like, well, yeah, I'm looking at just anything that would maybe make us stand out. Like this 2 pipeline is a little bit better. I'm looking at like really, really high deal breakers. So like there's an A- there. That's not bad. But then I'm also, of course, looking at like the national ranking for these guys. And so like these 2 guys are probably the 3 stars that stood out just because, again, they have a couple things that could work in our favor. Daniel Hurley is a 5'11" quarterback. I'm not thrilled about that. He's 1503 nationally. This guy's 1454. We only need the 1, and I'm just going to kind of pour everything into this guy because, I mean, he's 321st nationally. He has us 10th. It's a super, super long shot, but, like, whatever. We can always come back to those other guys later, especially with how low they're ranked. Like, they're not going to be recruited by, like, Penn State and Alabama and stuff like that. So we're going to add Brommel. Again, just going through a few positions here, potentially, just giving you an example, but we're going to be ripping through this a lot quicker and getting our board built out. Flipping through the receivers, which is not a need at all for us, but a guy like Hudson Redmond could make some sense for us. He's got a really nice deal breaker match for us, and he's got 2 pipeline, and yeah, we're just going to throw him on our board. I also love seeing the route runner tendency at 6'2". I have my recruiting board set up with all 35 targets set, and a big shout out to those in the comments. I didn't even realize you can hit square and automatically sort by different things like national rank, interest status, and recruiting stage. So super, super cool. I was not aware of that. But if I just sort by national rank, which is what I like to do, I can just give you a really quick look. We saw Lyle Merrick. I'm sorry, we didn't see Lyle Merrick. He's not the quarterback. He is a linebacker slash probably defensive lineman for us at that size. But we have players ranked as high as 102, 4-star, all the way down to, you know, a 1861 player who would probably be a linebacker for us. We have a ton of holes at really a lot of spots on defense. We'll start there. I mean, we have a ton of needs at defensive end, 7 needs at outside linebacker, which is just kind of wild. Don't even understand that. So kind of have some cross mixing of ends who could play linebacker and linebackers who could play ends and so on. That's actually a suggestion I have for the college football team. I would love to be able to edit the recruits position like based on my board. Like if I'm recruiting a linebacker but I have him kind of set as an end, I would love to just edit that or just like toggle that or something. I think that'd be really, really helpful. So again, ton of needs on defense. We need a kicker and punter. On offense, it's not too bad, just a few linemen. But really, at the end of the day, the process was exactly the same. I mean, we are Focusing on players who are interested in us, we have players as high as third. We don't have anybody on our board who has us number one, so a huge difference from when we were doing Texas, all the way down to a player that we're basically off the board here, having us at 10th. And so, try to keep it in there. Could I start looking at recruits that have us outside the top 10? Sure. You could absolutely make an argument for that. I'm not saying that's silly or anything like that, because really, what's the difference between this guy 10th and someone else who's like 15th? Probably not a whole lot. But for now, that's kind of what we're starting with. And then, of course, the other huge challenge here being James Madison is I have 500 hours. So, oh my gosh, this is not the same at all as being Texas. So I got to really kind of spend some time here, decide how we want to use this, because we definitely have some holes to fill. Here's a big tip that I would suggest being a 1-star versus, say, like Texas, where everyone wants to come play for you. After you have your board filled, and especially if you just kind of focused on interest, sort by the state your school is in. So in this case, we're sorting by Virginia, and just look and see. I've sorted by rating. There are no 5 stars, but there are a handful of 4 stars, and I'll just kind of flip through and see. Maybe there's some players that have like a deal breaker that could match up, because maybe we could swoop in and just steal somebody here, say like a Reed Harvey, a defensive tackle who has a proximity to home score of A+. There could be some things here. It's kind of the old like inside out recruiting strategy, and you could go out as far as you'd want with those, maybe like the neighboring states or something like that, but it's worth taking a look at that. And as a matter of fact, we are going to grab a couple of these players here. I've removed kind of the lowest ranked defensive tackle who was pretty low on our interest board, and we're going to replace him with Reed Harvey. We'll take a shot. It's also not a huge need for us, a defensive tackle. And then we're going to do the same thing. I removed kind of the lowest interior lineman that I was recruiting. It was an athlete this time, but we're going to replace him with DeMarco Dumaine. All right, so let's start talking points here. I mean, I have 9 players that are 4 stars. That's pretty ambitious for a 1.5-star school, or whatever JMU is, 1 or 1.5. And to spend a lot of scouting when we only have 500 points on guys like where we're like not even in their interest list, or like maybe we're 5th at best. I don't know, but I am going to offer them scholarships. And so if I do that for all 9 guys, well, that's going to be 45 points right there. And so we're going to start there, and that's almost 10% of our points. And maybe I'll recruit like maybe some guys that have us like in the top 5, like maybe these guys, or I should say scout. But really, I'm just hoping to see some movement by just offering them the scholarship. And then I'll probably spend most of my points in 3-star players, really scouting them to see if any of these guys pop to a, say, like 4-star, which would kind of be like a 3-star diamond. Even if these guys kind of bust out, I mean, they're still going to be decent players for us, so that's why I don't really worry too much about scouting. If they start showing more severe or significant interest, then we will start scouting them. The next thing I'm doing as a small school is I'm starting to look closer at my coaching staff. And so really the only recruiting perks we have are on defense. So I'm going to get a lot more bang for my buck recruiting, or I should say scouting defensive players. That's where we're going to start, just because I'm going to be able to do more with it. Of course, there's a lot of offensive players that I want to scout, but until we start maybe seeing more of these pop, we're going to start to kind of just utilize I guess you could call them like coupons, right? I mean, we're going to get stuff while it's on sale, and that's the idea here. Maybe offense will become a little bit cheaper later on, but we got plenty to scout. And being the bad team that we are and not having a ton of points, I'm still going to focus not just on national ranking, but also where they have us on their kind of top list of schools. And so I only have 2 players on defense that have us in their top 5, and I'm giving priority to them, even though Earl Hankerson is actually one of the lowest rated players we have on our board. Hey, if he pops, great, because we have a little bit of a leg up. So that's kind of the strategy here. It's going to cost us 30 points to scout even defensive players. So again, a huge difference here. And he comes out okay. So awesome. I'll wait to offer him a scholarship just now, because I do want to save points, and maybe we'll come back to that in just a second. The other player here on defense, Angel Rodigan, and we are going to be scouting him for the same reasons I just mentioned. And so that'll be the first 60 points. And look at that. It worked out really, really well. We unveil a diamond. He will get a scholarship offer right now. I'm going to go ahead and drop those 45 points on the 4-star offers so that we can make sure we spend that properly. And then that leaves us with 390. We've only spent 110. I have 10 scholarship offers out, and we've already found 1 diamond. Not too bad of a start. The next 120 points are going to go to the defensive players that have us 6th and our 3-star. And that unveiled some good and bad news. We had James Cutting come out. He's a guy that he's an end, but we're going to be using him probably as a speed rushing linebacker. He came out a diamond, so we're going to give him a scholarship offer. And then the next two guys we did actually came out as, I guess you could call them, busts or whatever. So that's a bit of a bummer. We may need to look for replacements there because we are pretty thin at these positions that we're recruiting. And then this guy came in, Larry Roby, came in just where we thought, but we're not offering scholarships just yet. But I do need to keep that in mind because I still have some 3-star guys that I do like that we want to make sure we leave enough time for offers. And one of the reasons why I like to sort by interest rank, especially with a bad team, versus like national rank is like national rank's a bit irrelevant. It can be a nice tiebreaker, but like it doesn't matter. So like if I'm scouting like, ooh, like this guy's gonna be the better player, this is great. But so what? If he's not going to sign with me, who the hell cares? And I'm just wasting points. What matters is interest status. If they're not number one, they're not signing with you. No matter how much you scout them, no matter how good you think they are. So that's why I prioritize interest status. I've got 70 points or hours left here after I've gone through the 7th and 8th ranked interest guys, and again focusing on just 3 stars for scouting because 4 stars we just offered the scholarship. Jason Tuggle is a corner, comes out 4, or I guess when I say 4, of course I'm meaning like 3 with a diamond. We've offered him a scholarship. Vernon scouted out just kind of normal, what we'd expect. Let's see what else we got. We had Capinos, another linebacker with a diamond, so offered him a scholarship. Bushman, another corner, offered him a scholarship. And then Zamora was a bust. He was actually the linebacker I think I just re-added into the mix after losing the previous one. So we have to find a replacement for the replacement. And then the replacement for the replacement for the replacement also busted out. I don't know what to do with this last spot. So yeah, this is turning out to be a really just heavy defensive recruiting week here. I've pretty much offered scholarships to everyone I've scouted who could play end, who could play outside linebacker, even some middle linebackers that I think can maybe move over and play outside. We've just gone crazy here with full scouting, offering, if they're 3 stars, again, we've also offered the 4-star guys. And that just leaves me 20 points. And so I'm just going to kind of keep with the discount here of doing a defensive player. And we will just scout this guy twice. And then that's really going to do it for our scouting points. Advancing to week 0, we get some notifications, just some things to keep an eye on, and you can of course look at this on your recruiting board, but we have a player that's kind of like officially locked us out, or at least unofficially locked us out. Small little note here, but you can see our strategy is starting to work. We have Joey Owen, middle linebacker. No one's really showing him any love or attention. We've already fully scouted him. We have already offered him a scholarship, and he's probably going to end up signing with us. And jumping back into our recruiting board, the strategy seems to be working. Look at these 4 stars and the interest that it's moved up everyone. Now, not everyone's going to just suddenly jump up and be in our top 5, but some of the guys that were showing some interest have moved up. Again, we have some guys here with just interest is just blank. They're just not showing up here at all. And then you have some players who just aren't getting any love from any other schools, like Sammy Lasco, and he is now number 1 for us. So again, we're just seeing some nice movements here, players coming and moving up across the board, and it seems to be working out really well for the 4 stars. And we now have 19 players that have us in their top 5. We have 5 players that have us as their top school of choice, and in that top 5, 3 of them are either a 4-star or they're a 3-star diamond. So it's working pretty well so far. I'm going to be sprinkling in just a few nuggets here as we go, but look at the colored bars here. So Penn State, of course, has blue, and we have a purple bar. And you'll see that the end of those bars are like a little bit darker. What that's showing is the growth from the previous week. So that's an important thing to note. Notice too on the right-hand side, there's a clock and it says 0 out of 50. And as I flip through all of my offensive players, they're all at 0 out of 50. And that's just kind of showing the amount of time that we could do kind of like the additional recruiting, like send the house or like message their family and friends and that kind of thing. Notice when I get to my defensive players, it changes to 60. So why is there a difference with that? And the answer is coaching abilities. This is my defensive coordinator who is an elite recruiter. And look at his tier 3. It says increase weekly recruiting hours for defensive linemen. He also has it for linebackers. But you probably noticed that my cornerbacks went down to 50 hours again. And that's because he doesn't have tier 3 for DBs. So what's my game plan now? Well, I still don't have the luxury of scouting these 4 stars. I know it's really exciting and you want to do it, and maybe you have some 5 stars in there too, but don't. They're going to be good players. They're going to fit in. What I need to do is start giving some attention to the offense. So what I'm looking for now are offensive players that are unscouted, which is basically everyone, and I'm looking for any player that is like in the top 8 that also has a scholarship offer. So like someone like Amari Ragas, that's a perfect example. Whereas this guy here, he's a possession tight end. I can wait a little bit. No one's really chasing after this guy. I don't need to offer him a scholarship. Now you could make the opposite argument. Maybe you go after this guy because he's going to just jump up the number one, and that's really up to you. But I know if I'm going to make a move on this guy, it's got to be right now. And so I'm just kind of prioritizing that. Again, you could also prioritize it on like positional need or just like a position that you really want to get, a player that you really like when you start kind of digging through the scouting. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'll probably finish off scouting Roger Pruce here, who's that defensive tackle we almost finished in the previous week. And then, yeah, just probably start throwing some scholarships, but that's going to be mostly it. There's not going to be a whole lot of wiggle room. I still have some defensive players I could go in and scout still, but you can see here this is a pretty big uphill battle to use Demetrius here as an example. We're number 10 for him. He's got a bunch of scholarships already. He's probably a good player, but again, Virginia, Syracuse, Boston College, Rutgers, I don't know. I don't know if I can compete with these guys. If this guy's good and they all want him, they all have nice pipelines for him. So what am I doing here? I'd just be wasting time. So we've done that, and that leaves us 75 hours left. A couple notes here. We did uncover a couple of diamonds. So Alex McGregor is a guard. We've offered him a scholarship. Bragg came back as a bust, so we'll need to find a replacement for him. And then Jamie Vaughn's tight end came out as a diamond. We've offered him a scholarship as well. I need to go back through and look at some of these other 3 stars that, say, have scholarships from other teams that are on offense, but maybe I just haven't decided if I want to give them an offer yet. And so I need to go back and look at that. But otherwise, we're just moving forward and just trying to be smart with the hours we have left this week. Now, of course, this is completely ignoring the fact that I haven't done any actions yet. And I'm okay with that for now because I want to build a deep team, especially on defense. So I get like you're in love with a guy, or maybe if you just like need a quarterback or something like that, you can start to really kind of get into this early. I think a lot of guys make mistakes though by just obsessing over like 1 or 2 prospects. I mean, you guys, you have an 85-man roster. You need depth for injuries. You need depth because I mean progression. So many things are going to change just based on what you're seeing here in the recruiting screens. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind. I will definitely be doing actions. But for now, I'm still just kind of like going wide. I'm spreading my net wide. I'm trying to catch what I can, and then we'll decide kind of what are the best fish for dinner to start cutting up. But when I look at this here, we're looking at not fully scouted. So, of course, the 4 stars I haven't done yet. I've offered them scholarships. I can make an argument to really kind of go big and start recruiting with some of these actions on these guys. I'm not going to do that yet. If I get some points, maybe. But all I have left that's not scouted are basically 3-star players that don't have scholarships from other schools. Or if they do, I'm not even in the top 8, and it's like, I'm just hanging on in case there's a miracle. This player suddenly shows some interest in us, and I don't expect that. So same thing here. But everyone else just doesn't have a scholarship. And again, you might want to push this. Like this guy might sign with me next week. He's a 2-star punter. Who knows? If I really push it, I could maybe get him. But I'm just still focusing on kind of the original game plan. I want to scout these guys. I want to know what's out there. To me, it's worth it to take a few weeks. I can still hit actions later on and really start to kind of play catch up a little bit, especially when I know what I'm going after. I need to find a tackle replacement for that guy who ended up busting. And what I'm doing is I'm sorting by, I already checked the 4 stars, but looking for players who have no offers here. And so I'm kind of going out of bounds, and you could consider this maybe a little bit cheese. I know this was like a big thing with last year's game, but I love that I don't see any 5 or 4 stars with this at least. And so as I scroll down, because I'm going to have to end up scouting this guy at some point, I mean, we're just going to grab this guy. He's the highest rated one. He's a pass protector. I love his size, actually. So we're going to grab him. He's out of Minnesota, so it's a bit of a wild card, but hey, no one's giving him any attention. We have 60 hours left, and I'm going to actually go through and use some of this additional recruiting. And so we're looking at kind of the add action section here. And of course, you can do different things. They each have a cost and they each have a maximum influence. And so if you look at search social media, it's going to cost you 5 hours and it's going to give you 1 arrow of influence. It goes up here and you can start to see it actually. And I don't know if it's a direct correlation, but like you'd think for 25, you would be getting like 5 of these bars, and you're not. In order to get the 5, you have to spend 50. So it does seem to kind of escalate. Again, I don't know if like each bar literally is worth the same, or I'm not exactly sure. But because of that, just to be safe, I'm going to just start with the DM player. It's also just kind of a good middle ground. I might not have to do as much. Of course, there are times where I use send the house, and I would recommend to do it. I mean, if you're really, really close and you really want to lock a guy up, go for it, especially in online leagues. I don't know if I'd use it maybe for like, oh, I'm not even on this guy's radar and we're going to try to just get up there. I guess you could. I'll show you an example in a second of where I wouldn't use something like that because really you're just wasting 50 hours. And if you're a bad team, you don't really have that to waste. So anyway, I'm going to go with 10. I've kind of already mapped this out, as I've mentioned in the previous video. I'm really meticulous about the hours that I'm spending. Like I write them down. I kind of plan it out ahead of time. The beauty of these is if you mess these up, you can actually just remove them. You can hold down triangle and it'll eventually disappear if you want it to. So that's kind of nice. So we're going to look at this quarterback. We're going to kind of move him up the board a little bit. Hopefully, I think it's close enough that it makes sense to do so. I also really like this power rusher athlete out of Las Vegas, and because, I mean, Nevada's pretty close to getting this guy, so it's kind of like now or never with him. So same thing here, we're going to add DM the player. I might even up his a little bit. We'll see. I'm going to show you that at the end. I'm going to go after this tight end too, similar reasons, just getting really, really close to making a decision, and maybe we can kind of move up a little bit. Yeah, there's other players I wouldn't mind doing it with, but I think I have a little more time with Pleasance. I think I have maybe a little more time, and also I already have some other ends that we're looking at here for Kessman. So a little bit of time there. I don't need to really push it too much with Lasco because we're the only team that's offering him a scholarship, and for now, again, we don't have the luxury of just like, let's just go all in and make sure we get him. I have to take my chances with him. Merrick I really like. I don't know if I'm going to use this guy in the D-line. He actually might just be like a middle linebacker for us, like a real beefy run-stopping middle linebacker at 254. Nevertheless, I like him a lot, so we're going to DM this player. He's got a sweet beard too, so I mean, come on. He's just a guy we need. The right guard here, so this is where I'm talking about. You could say like, all right, we need to go all in on this 4-star. We're not even on his radar. I need this guy. Sure, if you're Alabama or something, you could probably do that, or even like a middle tier school. I don't think it's worth it. I haven't tested it or anything, but we're not on this guy's radar. He's got Penn State, North Carolina, Maryland, Clemson, NC State. He's got plenty of offers. He doesn't need our offer. He's probably not going to take it anyway, even though he is a hometown player. Being out of Virginia, he's got a nice deal breaker for us, but I don't know. I'll keep my eye on him. I just can't see it. Even if we were in the top 8, I would be going after him, but I don't know. We got to be pretty far down there. We're not even on his list. Here's a really interesting player for me, and I'm going to be using my last 20 hours on Reed Harvey, who, by the way, is the 49th ranked player in the nation, not just at defensive tackle. He is the 5th best defensive tackle, yet he has 0 offers. He wants to play close to home, and so I don't know if the game's just like thrown me a bone here and like they just threw Reed Harvey in, so you kind of get a new prospect you're excited about or something. But I mean, this is kind of wild. Because I already, I guess, have I offered? Yeah, I have offered him a scholarship already, and I don't care if he busts. He'd still be like a 3-star. I'll take him, but I'm really curious just to see what he looks like. So I am actually going to scout him because I don't know if I need to use recruiting points. If he turns out to be like a 5-star, like if he's a diamond, wow, yeah, then we might know. So he's a guy I won't be able to fully scout him, but I'll be close, and that'll save me at least 20 points next week or 20 hours next week when we can finish off Reed Harvey and kind of see what he's going to be able to bring to the table potentially. So we'll see. So that's it, guys. That's the points for week 0. It's time to move on. And before we move on, I haven't shown you the actual makeup of James Madison. So if you wanted to just take a look at what I'm kind of working with here, that'll show you. Decent academic, prestige, coach stability, and prestige are pretty darn good, even though it shows me as a B- on the coach page. I'm not really sure where that's coming from. I guess it helps with my assistant coaches there too. So nonetheless, we got a few things to work with, and of course, proximity is still going to be our strongest. Advancing now to week 1, no surprise that guard we were looking at has locked us out. So I saved a bunch of points. I guess I could have thrown tons of points at him and seen maybe we popped on there, but anyway, we're locked out. We'll need to find a replacement there. The next 3 players are the guys that we did give some extra recruiting to, and so we're in a tough battle here for that middle linebacker potential guy, the 254 linebacker I was saying. Clemson's going after him pretty hard. That's a bad sign for us. David Power, I'm surprised. The guy from Las Vegas has had us pass Nevada. So we are now up to number 1 on his chart there. That's pretty cool. And DeMarcus Brommel, the quarterback we're looking at, Penn State's gone really heavy on this guy, so we're going to have to adjust our plan here. It's nice that we're second, but I mean, they are starting to run away on this guy, and they seem to really like him, so we're going to have our work cut out. As far as the 3-star guys, not a whole ton of movement here. We, of course, didn't do any sort of like extra recruiting on any of the 3-stars right now, but just kind of show you where we're at. But I mean, overall, we can't really complain as JMU here, a 1.5-star team, feeling pretty good so far. And perhaps that defensive end from Las Vegas flip-flopped us with Nevada because of their loss to SMU. So I still have a handful of players I haven't scouted, but now is the time when I start to go heavy with the additional recruiting tasks. And if I just scroll through here, you're going to see I have some points assigned. You can see it with the icon next to that alarm clock next to the player's name. And then underneath the action section, underneath the player profile, you can see there what we're doing. So for instance, with Reed Harvey, we are DMing the player. We are going really all in on Lyle Merrick because we actually have 2 of these, and I can use 2 of these, including Send the House, because on the right-hand side, above all of the different motivations being listed, you can see he has 60 hours available, like we talked about earlier. So that just kind of gives you like a general lay of the land. And so what you can do is I just kind of flip through these. You can look and see how I've kind of distributed my points based on where the particular player is, where they are in comparison to say like other schools and so on. And so again, you know, there's different strategies you can use. I don't have any sort of like golden rule. A lot of it's just kind of like you go on, I wouldn't necessarily call it feel, but it's just kind of like, all right, I think this is what we need to do, and this is when we need to do it. And so you can see I went from really not using any of these additional recruiting tasks to here in week 1, before we've even played our first game. Now we start going heavy because I have a much clearer picture of my recruit board because I've done a ton of scouting. And again, I still have players who are unscouted because they haven't had scholarship offers. And I would approach that differently if I was Texas, like we saw in the first video. But we have a lot of points being distributed here. Even some points, just the last guy I ended up just scouting at the end here, because it was kind of like, well, now or nothing if we're going to go and get this particular running back. Rutgers is after him pretty good. So we'll see if we can get some movement on a guy like that. I've added some other guys to the board just to kind of fill in for players that I feel like, for instance, with Gil Wilbur, we're like, I just don't think we're going to have a shot. It looks like Army's pretty hard on this guy here, and I just kind of would bring in like a backup again. And it's kind of where Bob Lang ended up being on our board there. Is kind of like, well, I guess we better start thinking about a plan B. I don't like to wait until I have zero chance for plan B. You can get an early start on your plan B, and that can make a big difference. So again, just a little thing I'm seeing there. I don't know if we have any points to anybody down here, but yeah, we still have a huge board of 35 players, and we'll learn a lot more, of course, next week. Okay, so I've now advanced to week 2, and I've actually tried to trim down some of these hours I'm spending, and of course, just kind of looking at where players are as far as their top schools and kind of how we're fitting. I tried to trim off anything I could do to get some extra points, because only having 400 hours a week, it gets really, really expensive to be using this each week, even though we did it last week successfully, because we have kind of a new thing happening here, and that's players who are ready for visits. And these visits aren't cheap, especially with only 400 hours. Each visit is 10% of my entire budget for the week. And so even with this, I need to be strategic about scheduling visits. And of course, the quicker you can schedule a visit, the better. It's not like they get cheaper later on. If anything, it's going to hurt you because you might not get as many options to choose from as far as what game they're visiting. And it's technically, or I guess typically, the best option is to get the player in towards the end of the season. You usually have a rivalry game, that kind of thing. And so there's a few different strategies you can take, but that's kind of the general lay of the land when it comes to bringing in recruits for visits. And so I know right off the bat I want to bring in Merrick because this is pretty close. I think it's going to be important. And we're a little bit further behind here with Brommel, but I still want to go kind of all in on this guy. It's such an important position, and we could definitely use it. Our starting quarterback, by the way, got hurt. I lost my first game of the year. We were winning 14-7 at half. We ended up losing 24-14. Just couldn't get our offense going with the backup quarterback, and he's out for like a month. So that's going to be tricky, but it's taught me that, oh my gosh, yeah, we really need to make sure we're prioritizing bringing in talent at the quarterback position. That's nothing new. But some of these other players, I don't know, I might wait and just kind of save the points, because I would hate to waste 40 on a guy that, I don't know, he looks like he's pretty dedicated and ready to commit to Army. Rutgers, maybe it's a little bit closer of a race. Here we're third, but maybe we could use kind of like the comp visits, like the complementary visits of like bringing in the quarterback prospect with a tackle. They might like that being there on the same week. So there's a few other little strategies we need to look at. I've tried to free up enough points to do this, but I also have players that haven't been scouted yet. And so again, like this is where it gets really, really tricky being such a bad program. I have lots of things I can do and just not a ton of points to do it with. So you really have to kind of pick and choose what you want to prioritize here. And the way I schedule my picks is, of course, I just kind of look through the schedule and I'm looking at the arrows up and down, of course, and it's kind of self-explanatory there. But I kind of identify I have two games that make sense to bring recruits into. I think the Marshall game at the end of the year, and then there's also this Southern Mississippi game that would be kind of a backup game. So like my primary players, like 4-star guys for sure, I'm going to want to invite to this. But if they start to show like conflicts, like I say if I was recruiting 2 quarterbacks, I might have the other quarterback, kind of like the backup option quarterback, go to this game instead. Again, there's other strategies you can use, being earlier in the season if you're worried about a guy signing, or if you're neck and neck, maybe you're in first place, for instance, you just want to get that guy locked up to free up the points. Maybe you bump it up sooner in the year. But for Merrick here, again, we are not in first place, and we're just going to try to schedule that visit as late in the season as we can. And so that's what we're going to do here. Then, of course, you get to go in and pick the different activity you're going to use. And so on the right-hand side, I can look and see the grades that my school has. And then what we're looking at and the check marks are things that we've unlocked that the player is interested in. And so where there's kind of like a really good mix, we can see that playing time is an important interest of his, and it matches up with our grade of playing time. And so that makes a lot of sense. And that's a huge win for us because, of course, against Clemson in the recruiting battle, he's going to get more playing time, you'd think, just generally speaking, coming to JMU instead of Clemson. We're going to do the same thing here with Brommel, and I can invite them to the same week. They're not going to conflict with each other. And so again, he's kind of a top tier option, so we'll kind of push that back. It's not going to hurt us to extend that a little bit later in the year. So we'll go there. And then same thing, just looking at now his proximity to home is going to be the one that we want to focus on here. And that's going to be this one here. Now, because I can't get to everything that I want to do this week because of my very finite amount of hours, I've decided I'm just going to focus in on the guard position here because I have to decide what I want to do with Rabe. He's a fully scouted 3-star, so he's like nothing super special, but it's still a need. It's a player that I'd like to get. And it's kind of now or never with NC State being really close. So like, do I go all in with this guy and maybe throw him 50 points or something like this to, send the house or whatever it's called? And so the way I'm going to determine this is by scouting Rayshon Berlin here. And if he comes out as like a 4-star, well, maybe that gives me a little bit of breathing room. I don't need to go in so hard on Ray, but if he ends up busting or something, then I will. So that's what we're going to do here. We're just going to get some information. I won't have enough to offer him a scholarship unless he turns out to be really good. Then I'll kind of ignore Rabe. So we're just going to start scouting and just hope this guy doesn't bust at least. Oh, wow, that worked out really nice. And so now this is really easy. We will offer him a scholarship. And we're not on his list, so I don't know. It's going to be a little bit similar to that defensive tackle that I really like, who just hasn't really moved the needle. And so maybe I could even start to give those guys, like someone like a Berlin who's not even on the list, and then this defensive tackle who also is fully scouted, 4-star, no attention from anyone, has a scholarship from us, but is not in the top 10. So I have to just figure out how I want to use his other points. But what's nice is I saved myself the 40 points of setting up a visit for this guy. I'm sorry, not a visit, but going with the sending the house. So I saved 50 points. And now I can use that 35 points elsewhere. And with just 35 hours left, I can't even fully scout an offensive player because that's going to cost me 50. I can't even offer another campus visit because that's going to cost me 40. So I've sorted by interest status, and I'm going down at the bottom, and I'm going to look at the 2 players that, again, are off of the list, basically. And I just value defensive tackle more than a guard. And so we're going to give this guy 10 points extra. And then we're going to go up to Harvey here and just see if we can move the needle a little bit and just be really the one school recruiting these guys. Just having them on the board, even with a scholarship, hasn't really seemed to nudge it along at all. And I'm just hoping we'll see some movement next week. So we just beat up on FCS East. No surprise there. And we've gotten some pretty good news here on the recruiting front, looking at our top 5 at least. Reed Harvey is now jumped up because we kind of put some pressure on him there. And with no one else recruiting him, we're just going to get these 25 points back and just hope that Now that we're on his radar, he's going to just continue to progress. Made some nice movement here. I'm going to keep this pressure on at 50. It's a lot, but let's just kind of see how it goes. We got some visits up there. Clemson's going to be tough to compete against. Lasco just kind of seems to be a lock at this point. Pleasant, making some nice progress. I might just kind of keep that there. We could even go down maybe a little bit. Could probably go down a little bit. Well, they have the better pipelines. I'm going to leave that one. And then looking here, we're starting to get a little more pressure. So I think stack, we're going to just give a little bit of extra action here just to kind of keep our lead going. So that's how the top five's looking. Looking at the rest of those 4-star players, I have increased our offer to power, or at least the pressure. I've gone from, I think, 15 up to 25 on him. Brommel, we're doing everything we can. I don't know if it's going to work. Penn State's got him pretty locked up there. And then Kessman, we're just going to keep it going. Looks like he's getting pretty close to making a decision. I've already advanced to the next week, but really all you missed was me just dispersing the points around. And at this point, it's really just however you want to use it. If it's for scouting, if it's for kind of like, pushing the recruiting actions or scheduling visits and so on. There is a scheduling bug you might encounter where a guy's ready for a visit and then it just doesn't let you do it. That's a bug, at least the time of this video. We don't really exactly know why that's happening, but I don't know. It's not even that unrealistic. I mean, maybe just the guy just isn't interested in visiting. And so again, you can really use the points how you want. I'm going to start ripping through these weeks a little bit quicker. But the idea is you're, of course, just checking in each week, just kind of seeing progress for players, seeing where things can kind of move, and just it really, I think the other skill to talk about is like knowing when to cut your losses. Like here it is, we put everything we can into Lyle Merrick, and it's just not looking great. So do I cut things a week early and get those points back to use elsewhere? Do I keep doing it knowing that I might waste that 50 points for nothing? That's really up to you. So it's really just keeping an eye. I'll be reporting back as we start signing players or players start signing elsewhere. Well, none of these are going to come as a surprise, but DeMarcus Brommel has committed to Penn State. Larry Roby has committed to Rutgers, and also to Rutgers, Amari Ragas. Let's pause for a second on JMU, and let's jump back into the Texas Online Dynasty that we were going over in part 1. And I just want to kind of show you an update because, of course, there's just a lot of different things that you can, I guess, take into consideration, and you may want to kind of alter your plans when you're in a league against other users. And so we're at the stage now, we are in week 0 where we're able to use this additional recruiting, and I'm pretty much pouring it on as much as I can with my 5 stars, especially a 5-star diamond, and even 4-star players that have a diamond. You can see on the right hand side with the clock, I have gone through and maxed out every single one of these players. Now, I can't do that across the board, and even in some players like Chad Keel, he doesn't really have any competition just yet, so I'm just kind of letting it be. He might. There could be other users looking, saying, oh, okay, maybe I have a shot. Only Texas has a scholarship. So like if I had all the points in the world, I would be going after this guy harder too, but I guess I'm just kind of rolling the dice a little bit. Again, just a strategy you'd have to kind of determine for yourself there to see. But really, we're just going in big here on players, and then again, there's some other players without really much competition, it seems. I'm just kind of leaving alone. There's other players that I do like this Matt Shakir quarterback we talked about. I'm not going after him. We have 2 other quarterbacks we like. No reason to be pushing the envelope there. As I start to get down into kind of like in Texas's case, again, we're very, very lucky here being Texas. When I get down in just like the regular 4 stars, that sounds ridiculous, but like I'm not as concerned. I still want these players. I still think they're really, really good, and their dev traits can be really good, which you'll find out once you finish recruiting. But I've gone through and again just kind of looked at each player individually. I've kind of halved what I want to do. Instead of like doing 50, I would kind of like hope to do 25 like I've done with these guys. But there's some other players too that maybe I said, well, I love Damian Vaughns. He's that quarterback with like 93 speed or whatever, and 92 throwing power. But if we don't get him, it's not the end of the world. We have the other 5-star quarterback that we were able to grab, and really this is kind of just to keep pressure on Oklahoma. They're a rival. I'd be playing Damian Vaughns every single year, and so it's an attempt to almost kind of avoid that. And who knows, Damian Vaughns might come in and be the better quarterback. There's other players in this mix that I've just kind of like accepted that I probably won't get, like a Devin Bell. It looks like Auburn's going to have this guy locked up. He's got better pipeline tiers, and if anything changes next week, I can adjust, but I was looking for areas to cut some timing, and we did that. And so again, just kind of going through, most guys who have the 25 and are a 4-star, it's because I'm like kind of neck and neck, either in first, second, maybe third. Or you'll have a guy like Felix here where I said, okay, I have it's not the end of the world. Like maybe I've just kind of looked at kind of things and said, well, he's a nice player, but if I don't get this guy, it's not the end of the world. Eventually, you have to make some concessions. You can see there's some players here. Again, looking at the deeper scouting, I'm not loving the pass blocking at 74 for this guy. I have some other tackle options, so he's kind of the odd man out. Still recruiting him, though. If he wants to come here, great. Same thing here, Darren Cummins. You can see he has a pass block of 68, so that's really alarming for me, even at a guard. If he wants to come here, awesome, but I'm not really pursuing him too much. And so, again, just really kind of goes to show there's a million different ways that you can do this, but I wanted to check in with our Texas Dynasty here and just kind of show you how things are looking. And I got to say, this process is working really well, even in an online league. And I get it, I'm Texas, number 3 ranked team. We won our first game. I mean, we're in a good position here, but just looking at how this looks now in week 1, after I've advanced, after I've updated the points again, this is kind of where I'm sitting as we go into week 2, or at least before we advance into week 2. Even so much as like leapfrogging Michigan, which I was not expecting to do. I'm thinking the Michigan user, who's a really good friend of mine in real life, maybe he just didn't kind of like put in the extra recruiting on this guy, because I was not expecting this. He was a player that I was actually really close to just kind of giving up on, because I assumed he would just be a lock for Michigan. And it's certainly not a lock for me. None of these players are. They're not a lock for anybody at this point. But you can see we're really able to spread across our 900 hours. I mean, we are able to really cast a really wide net. But we have a ton of guys here who are at least looking at coming to Texas, if not very likely to be coming to Texas. And we're just in really, really good shape. And again, this is an online league. 32 active users right now, and it's been really, really cool. By the way, we have a very short wait list, so if you're looking, it seems like every few days we have someone kind of maybe switching out with the team here, as we're still kind of course, in the early stages, like all online dynasties. But I'm just flipping through here just to show you my board of 35, and you can just see, you can pause this however you'd like to see the progress we're making. But guys, this is working. It's working at a big school. It's really working at the small school too. And then so it's been cool. Nothing's set in stone yet. Even these guys at the bottom here who are verbally committed, I mean, that can still change. I have not actually gone too deep into a franchise to see exactly how that might change. We will get to that in future videos, but I appreciate you guys checking this one out, because I am not only excited about my online dynasty team here, super excited about what I'm doing in the JMU dynasty as well. And I love hearing what you're all doing too. So thanks for sharing those comments. Make sure you like the video and subscribe. I'm on Twitter at MikeLow47 as well. And I'm just always looking to connect with you all as we just re-embrace this wonderful game. Super excited about it. I know it's not perfect, but I'm loving it. I hope you are too. And guys, I appreciate everything you've been doing here. And yeah, keep coming back. Let's talk more. Let's get more into some college football. I'll see you next time.